Good evening, everyone. A very, very big warm welcome. Well, it's a very hot day today, not just a warm welcome, a very big warm welcome anyway, from us to this Alumni Engage event. Let's start with housekeeping first. It would be great if you could keep your cameras and microphone turned off to facilitate a smooth running of the event. And for all the audience joining us today, please do join in the evening's conversation. My name is Amelia Yu-Cheung, and I'm the Deputy Dean and Associate Professor in Claude Littner Business School, University of West London. I'm very pleased to be here with all the participants and audience here today. I'm not sure how many of you actually know about Claude Littner Business School, so perhaps allow me to spend a few minutes to introduce you to the business school. The business school, Claude Littner Business School, we pride ourselves in our social mission to develop students to break barriers and achieve beyond possible through two main mechanisms. One is partnership with business community and provide students opportunities to learn through working with real life business problems. The second mechanism is by providing tailored, personalized learning and support to our students. Claude Littner Business School is going to places. Just to highlight a few of them, we have won the Business School of the Year Award at the Time Higher Education Award 2019. We are ranked 17 in the UK in business management marketing subjects in the Guardian University Guide 2021. In the same guide, we are the top ranked university in London for satisfaction with the course in accounting and finance subject. We're named Public Sector Accountancy College of the Year 2021 by PQ Magazine, which is a very influential magazine in the accounting and finance sector. We are also the winner of the Leveling Up Universities Awards 2021 in the Extending Enterprise category. Such success of the business school is all due to the hard work and many other stakeholders who have supported us along the way in our delivery of our mission. One of such key stakeholders is our alumni. Alumni play important roles at the university. It is very important that we engage with alumni and make them feel they are an integral part of the university. Alumni are important for many reasons. Because of time, I'm just going to give you two reasons why they're important. Alumni are solidly woven into the very fabric of the university. Their success is our success is their success. We are intertwined together. Without the alumni, University of West London would not be what we are today. Secondly, alumni played very important role model to our students. They are a source of inspiration for our students, and they have so much valuable insight and advice. And it would be a big shame to let these insights and advice go lost. On that note, in conversation with one of our influential alumni, Sim Scavazza, about her highly successful career, her achievements to date, and her insights and advice for aspiring fellow alumni students. Sim is currently non-executive director at Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust and deputy chair at University of the Arts, London. Prior to these, Sim has had a highly successful career in fashion retail and has once been voted as one of the UK's most influential people in fashion retail by trade magazine Drapers. Sim's highly successful career started actually in Ealing. Sim never intended to study at University of West London, but she's very glad she did. Undergoing the clearing process, she was helped by the Somerset County Council to locate a course that worked for her, a sort of like hodgepodge collection of studies known at the time as the humanities degree. Looking back, Sim said, "I was so grateful and I'm so happy to be there that I absolutely devoured it up." Sim considers that the university and the Ealing area gave her the head start she needed for her career. During her studies, she took a job as a waitress at a local restaurant called Charlotte's Place. While working at Charlotte's Place, Sim got to know the buying director of fashion chain Chelsea Girl, which is today's River Island. That was the beginning of a 25-year stint in high street fashion industry. Gradually, Sim worked her way up to the chain to work on ranges, come up with ideas, analyze sales history, and negotiating with suppliers. From trainee buyer to higher and high positions in our strategies. However, she wasn't destined to stay in fashion forever. Currently, Sim is the deputy chair of the University of Arts London and a non-executive director with the NHS, as I mentioned earlier. Reflecting on her career, Sim is aware that her ability to pick things she cares most about is a result of a lifetime drive and determination. Her current position is the result of hours of putting the work in, getting experience under her belt, and one decision long ago to attend the University of London in Ealing. In Sim's words, the thing that really excites me now is my ability to affect people positively, having a positive impact on students, staff, people of color. Well-being and looking after the staff after this awful year and a half is the most important thing. I just want to create a positive impact and leave something useful to people because there is nothing else in this life. Now, that is to me a very poignant reflection on Sim's fundamental passion and drive. So let's start the conversation with her now. So Sim, hello.
Hi, Amelia.
How are you?
Very good, very hot.
Indeed, indeed. Lovely to see you here today. So you know, from what I've read and heard, you seem to have, very fond memory of your time at University of West London and Ealing. So very naturally, my first question to you is how did your time at University of West London set you up for a successful career? Well, do you think that's the case?
Yes, absolutely thus. I suppose the fact that it was London, I came from a small town in Somerset called Taunton, so Ealing was a perfect beginning, a sort of just a little bit of an outside borough, but it gave my first step into the big city life, if you like, and it was perfect because a community was built around Ealing, but then you also had access to town. So it felt like this sort of dual location that I was able to take advantage of, and I love that. I loved it very much, that sort of villagey feel of Ealing, but then being able to go into town. And of course, the university, or the college as it was at the time, exciting, eclectic. I so wanted to come and get on in higher education, and I was just so pleased to be there. As you said, I devoured every second, every minute, made my friends for life, and it was just perfect for me because I wanted it so much.
Oh, that's brilliant. And if I'm allowed to ask you, what is your fondest memory of your time here then? I'm sure there must be loads, but choose one or two. Share with us, please.
Oh dear, I don't know if I could share them, but I mean, it was just the socialization. It was just the making friends. People all around the nation. My best friend came from Northampton. I'd never even heard of Northampton at the time. So for me, the highlight was just people, young people, all learning and that sort of thing. The second thing was my year abroad, actually. I took a year out and went to France and worked in a school as an English assistant. And that was through the British Council. I loved that. That's where I started to think in French, and I started to become much, much more fluent. So that was an experience, quite frightening to begin with, but really, if I look back, set me up for being in positions that are uncomfortable, and being lonely and having to make friends. That was amazing. So those two things. Yeah,
it's fantastic to hear that. I think a lot of times, from experience with students, some of them feel like I'm just here, come to classes, get a degree. It's not. It's much more than that, isn't it? It's about meeting people, networking.
Yeah, exactly. It's the whole experience. I've always said that I think education is transformative. You kind of don't know it at the time. You plod through, you do your exams. It can be a bit difficult sometimes. It can be uncomfortable others. But looking back, you realize what you gain. And it is exactly that. It's not just the academic education, it's the ability to be able to plow through acres of reading and work, and it sets you up. As a non-exec director, one of the things you've got to do is read the papers. You know, sometimes they can be 200 pages long. You've got to build up the ability to be able to take in information, any sorts of information, quite quickly. Studying, you know, at uni helps you do that. The other thing that really helped me was sort of being able to stand up and speak publicly. You know, that's very important, because you've got to get your ideas across. You know, if you're running a business, part of that is selling the vision. And if you don't sell the vision, people don't, it's not compelling, and your staff aren't able to put into play the strategy that you've put forward. So that's really important. Being able to tell your story is so, so important for all young people nowadays, regardless of industry.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, my students definitely need to hear from you on this. Brilliant. So let's move on to talk about your career. To start with, why fashion retail?
Well, I knew I wanted to do something with fashion, but I kind of fell into it. Had I known when I came out of school after my A-levels that actually I could have gone to college to do fashion business or something like that, I would have done it. But in my day, that wasn't accessible to me. It was very vocational and very academic, the school I went to. So I didn't realize. And my creative side, obviously, having been brought up in a continental family, I'm half Italian, half Jamaican, always surrounded by clothes and travel. My grandmother was a seamstress. My mother was always very fashion forward. So I was surrounded by this. And I wanted to do something that was creative. I wasn't traditionally arty, you know, I couldn't draw, but I did have a creative side that later I realized needed to get out. So I happened to, as you say, bump into the buying director of then Chelsea Girl, who recognized my skills just from coming to the restaurant over a period of a year. And she said, why don't you come and see me? And to begin with, I thought she was going to give me some advice, and I was very pleased for that. But she ended up offering me a job. And I remember her words, you'll either sink or swim, and it's up to you. She had no idea whether I would be able to do it. I just felt so excited. I felt like I could do it, but I just put my all into it again. It was a dream come true. So an opportunity. And I just threw myself at everything. Yeah.
Fantastic. I think that is so important, that, you know, when the opportunity come up, and embrace it and have that confidence that I can do it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Even if you fear, you can't. It's like the imposter syndrome. You know, no one can do everything, but you can learn, you know.
Absolutely.
And, you know, having been to uni, you know, your ability to pick things up is going to be second to none. So, you know, feel nervous, but do it anyway. That's what I say to my kids.
See where you are now.
Yeah, do it
Brilliant.
anyway. Yeah.
That's great. Right, so I'm going to move on and ask you, so with the fashion industry, right, the fashion retail, I mean, to me, as you know, as a woman, I think fashion is fun. So, you know, in your career in the fashion industry, are there any fun story you can share with us?
Oh my goodness me. Well, fashion retail, high street retail back in the day was mad. A lot of travel all over the world, constantly. Very tough industry, very aggressive. You were as good as your last sale. So it toughened you up. But, you know, it was very sociable. You had to go out with suppliers all the time, you know. So I remember one incident actually just sticks in my head when I was managing director of Miss Selfridge. And we put on a big fashion show for the first time in a long time, a big public event, and Philip Green was there to support it. And I remember Isabella Blow had done some work for us, a famous sort of fashion editor, and she came along, and we were sat at the table looking at the show, and Isabella said to me, oh, Sim, Miss Selfridge haven't put an ad in, she was working for Tatler at the time, for ages. When are you going to do it? And I said, oh, honestly, Isabella, we can't afford, you know, my marketing budget won't stretch to that. You know, how much is it going to be? Oh, only 30K, she said, only 30K. With that, Philip whipped out his checkbook and wrote a check and threw it at me.
Wow.
What? This is how strange it was to work for someone like that. I'll never forget that. Another thing that sticks in my head is flying out to Hong Kong. And it was one of the first long haul trips I'd ever done. And I remember getting up in the middle of the night, all dark, everybody asleep. And there was terrible turbulence. So I didn't think anything of it. Everybody was strapped in. I went to the ladies. I came out of the ladies and basically took off. So I just went and I banged my head on it was so frightening. So I landed with a thump down back in between the aisles and I crawled back to my seat. I've never been so frightened. I'll never forget that journey, and not being able to tell anyone because it was just horrendous. So strap in for turbulence. That's the other thing.
Oh gosh, but you landed safely.
Landed safely, thank goodness. That's the worst experience, given that basically, 4 or 5 times a year we would be traveling. That doesn't happen so much anymore, not just because of COVID, but because of budgets and just the ability to be able to, negotiate by phone or video call. So yeah.
Well, it sounds like really, great fun. Having your career, traveling all over the world, meeting all sorts of people, and even Philip Green, throwing a check to you. I mean, that's fantastic. That's really colorful, experience, isn't it? So you stayed in the industry for 25 years roughly, isn't it? So what's the most enjoyable part of this career that keep you there for that long?
Oh, it's fun. Imagine coming up with, it was just fun. It was hard. It was challenging. But when you love something and you're passionate about fashion or whatever it is, you're passionate. I just loved it. And I loved running my teams. I loved it when they performed well, when we got it right. It's that team excellence that you get as you build your leadership style. There's nothing better than promoting people, watching people grow. That was amazing. And just what was a fantastic industry. It's struggling now, but in my day it was flourishing, and there were things to learn and new ways to put clothes and ranges together. People started doing shoes in clothes shops. That was unheard of at the time. Everything was separated. So, there was lots of innovation. So for me, fashion retail offered me the innovation and the dynamism I needed as a person. I realized I was quite forward looking, always looking ahead. And that's what fashion offered me, constantly looking a year ahead, which has set me up well actually now for whatever I do, because I can read the signs and the runes as they start to begin to happen. So that's really useful, that being able to forecast and look ahead.
It's that acumen, it's that vision. You can just see what is there in the future, and that's fantastic. And I think, like you said, that's part of the fun, that parts of the challenge. But yet, it must be really rewarding in a way as well. And also, you said about developing people. I think, I don't know about you, but to me, real leadership it's about developing people, isn't it? Eventually, obviously you align them with the organization, but it's about developing people. So you sound like to me a definite real leader with vision, with the passion to develop people. Fantastic.
Yes, but it doesn't, you have to learn that,
of course,
and you have to make the mistakes to realize what you need to do. And it's okay to make mistakes. That I used to be so fearful of getting things wrong, but actually what I learned was getting stuff wrong made you better, because you learned the hard way. So perfection isn't necessarily it's not the best path to a great leader. You've got to have made some mistakes, I think, to really understand people and just listen. And I don't mean here, I mean listen to your people, to people. That's a skill. That's a skill. Yeah.
Brilliant. That's definitely something I think our audience should take away from. So you started off as a trainee buyer and then progressed higher and higher up, eventually managing a team of people, working at strategic level, and becoming like I quoted earlier, influential figure in the industry. So has you talk about all the fun, all the good bits, the bit that you enjoy. Has there been any real big challenge that you have come across, you know, in any of these roles, positions you have held, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, so I suppose that the biggest challenge is being in charge of so much money. So when you run a fashion retailer, it is, you know, the figures are enormous. Or just buying, you know, I remember my trouser budget at Next on a weekly basis, on a yearly basis. If you concentrated on that figure, you would become frightened. So you had to sort of turn that off and just concentrate on your customer, the history of the sales, what's going on looking forward, and just really focus in and get that bit right in order to produce the sales, and be risk averse in some respects, or be able to mitigate risk. It's not about not taking risk, it's about having plans for if things go wrong, because they will. So that's probably a big learn. I think the other challenge was the business side of it. You know, it's incredible how much you need to understand in order to run a business, and that we're not taught. Unless you do business studies, you're not taught. So I had to learn the hard way, you know, ploughing through the P&L, sitting with the finance director, understanding the mechanics and the levers that I had to be able to manipulate the profit. It was just, that was hard, because it's not a natural kind of, you know, a passion of mine. But you come to learn numbers count. And being fashion retail, every Monday, every hour, every sale became absolutely evidence of the work that had been put in. So, you know, it's all there in the sales figure. There's nowhere to hide. That's quite frightening. If you get it,
I'm sure.
Yeah, you waste a lot of money as your profit wiped out through markdown. So that was a hard lesson. You know, getting it wrong is horrendously expensive, right? So
Of course.
you know, you've got to be brave as a buyer, and you've got to be confident, and you've got to utilize the evidence you have around you. You know, it's about decision making with the right evidence behind you.
Indeed. You mentioned a little bit earlier that you said, you know, things will go wrong. Yeah. So is there any chance you can share with us, you know, one incident where things went wrong, and how did you turn it around?
Yeah, so let's have a think. Well, in any part of my life, or in my fashion life, or what's
let's say the fashion life, or up to you.
Yeah, so for me, I think it would be really being frightened. I left, that's right, I left Chelsea Girl, or River Island as it was then, and I left without having another role. And I was really nervous about that after a long time. And I just want to sort of say to people, don't be scared. It all comes around in the end. And I remember being so nervous, it made me ill, actually, to the point where I was actually a bit depressed. But what I realized was, it's your social and your equity, I suppose your skill base is in with you. It's not the job, it's you. So you transfer your skills to another place, and you can find success. So don't be scared if you ever end up having to look for a job without the job in the first place, or you know, you have to, you're a period of not working. It's okay. There's plenty of time to grow, and there's plenty of time to learn. Don't be frightened of periods of not working or that sort of thing. It does come right in the end. It gives you time to think. Just don't panic. Take a breath.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that's important, isn't it? Because I think naturally a lot of people, especially younger people, they're less experienced. When they see these things happening, they immediately is like, oh my God, you know, I'm a failure. Exactly. And you know, what am I doing then? You know, how do I go from here? I think, you know, your advice now is really useful, I think. And also, you know, you have come through all that journey and be so successful, and that is encouraging, you know, for all the other younger people or the audience listening, isn't it?
Exactly. The road is hardly ever straight. It curves and it bends and it goes backwards sometimes, but keep your eye on the end result. Keep your eye on doing the right thing. If you're in an industry that you love, you're going to do well. If you're working somewhere that doesn't fill your soul, guess what? It's going to be really hard. So, you know, even if it's a portion or an element of the business you work for, find that element and really, really embrace it. And that will keep you going and it will make you excel.
Brilliant. So I'm going to ask you this. You know, talking about all these like setback difficulties and you know, challenges, has being a female and also you know, with your racial background, for example, posed any particular barriers to you in your entire career, and how did you go beyond those barriers and become so successful and so highly accomplished?
Well, you know, yes, there are a couple of intersectionalities there, aren't there? I'm Black and I'm a woman.
Indeed.
Luckily, the industry that I worked in to begin with, in the beginning of my career, was very female orientated. So a huge amount of female workers within head offices, but the senior execs were usually men. So you could see the sort of imbalance, which is really where we are. So the truth of the matter was, if at any point I was held back, I kind of ignored it and pushed on. So there are various routes people can take, and it depends on the circumstances. There's no one rule and there's no one solution, I think. I don't know what you found, Amelia, but it all depends on the circumstances and the people you're working for. My antennae can tell me when I'm working with people that perhaps have got a problem with race or colour, in which case I have one modus operandum. And then, you know, if I feel that there's a difficulty with women, I just become, I use a different tack. I become more assertive and more eloquent in order to combat that. That's just my way. It's not necessarily, you'll always find barriers. I tended to plow through them and ignored them. Sometimes they held me back and I found another way in. So don't give up. It's not good enough that people stop you doing well because of your gender or the colour of your skin. It's not acceptable. It never has been, especially not now. And you can call it out now. In my day, very difficult to call it out. But I would know when I was being ignored. I've been ignored in network meetings. Yeah, I stood there with three white men, one white woman. They completely ignored me. And to begin with, I thought I must be getting it wrong. So I re-engaged in the conversation. Nobody looked at me. It was the most disgusting feeling I've ever had in my life. I would never want anyone to go through what I felt at that moment when they all ignored me. It was as if I was an alien. It was, and that I now believe was because it was the colour of my skin. I wasn't deemed important enough to listen to. Never.
Yeah, it is a very interesting, you know, story that you're sharing. Like you said, it's the intersectionality. It's not just one thing or another, really. And I mean, you know, the example you gave us, it does ring the bell. Some, you know, for me, you know, sometimes you go into this particular. It's quite prominent in you know, social events. Yeah. If you are in that group, they're all. Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want the audience to get me wrong. But for example, like you said, a group of white people, female, men, you know, male, doesn't matter, but basically you feel like you're the odd one out. And then, like you said, sometimes you wonder, like, oh, is it me, or is there something wrong with me, or am I not, I don't know what it is, but you know, is it me not fitting in? But you're right, it's not acceptable. It's not me. The problem is not me, you know. So, but like you said, you know, I absolutely agree with you that no matter what it is, you just plow through, ignore it, rather than thinking, okay, accept it, you know, never accept it, just carry on and you will break through somehow. Yeah, so I think that's a very interesting experience that you share with us, really. And I think it's just want to pick up, you know, it's very, you know, like you said, in the old days, it's you know, basically it's more difficult to call out, but even today, when calling out it's kind of easier, we still have a long journey to go, don't we?
Absolutely correct. We have a huge journey, and funnily enough, part of my work now is equality, diversity and inclusion, and specifically anti-racism. You know, it wasn't deemed necessary to call out that specific protected characteristic. But following George Floyd and just looking at what COVID has done and the inequalities, you know, and looking at the football, you know, racism is alive and kicking in this country, and it's soul destroying. So it is difficult to call it out, isn't it, Amelia? In the middle of a big meeting, you're going to stand up and say, this isn't acceptable, and everybody look at you. You've got to pick your moment, and you've got to pick your words. And sometimes it's best to go to the chair after the meeting, or go to the person and have the one-to-one conversation. And sometimes they're shocked because they didn't realize. Other times they know. But the point is not to collude, but to have that conversation on a one-to-one basis and say, I'm sorry, what you said, it wasn't right, and it made me feel like X, and that's the way I've learned to do it. You know.
And you know, you just brought in the issue of, you know, unconscious bias. So sometimes they know what they've done, sometimes they're not aware of that. So I think, you know, this unconscious bias is also, you know, quite worth a bit of effort to, I don't want to use the word educate other people, but basically these are the things that we just need to talk about, really, isn't it? You can't just put them under the carpet.
And we have put it under the carpet, and that's why it's so uncomfortable for people, you know. And lots of my white friends are now, you know, starting to talk about it, and it's brilliant. And the more we talk, the better we get in sort of using the language, and, you know, learning about friends that you thought you knew, and hearing some of those horrible experiences that you hadn't realized they'd been through. You know, good white people don't know half of it because, you know, they haven't experienced it, so they don't believe it could be true sometimes. But unfortunately it is, as we know. So, you know, yeah, it's good to have the conversation. Are you there, Amelia?
Yes, indeed. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, that's great. Right, so you just start talking about, you know, your current work. You know, so basically you have moved from retail, fashion retail, to the cultural not-for-profit sector. Tell us a bit, you know, how did you get in there, and why did you decide to move into this sector now?
Everything is linked. It's not as disjointed as it seems on first sight, because I stepped into the University of the Arts London through fashion. I did a lot of work with London College of Fashion whilst I was managing director of Miss Selfridge. I helped them set up the Centre for Sustainability at the London College of Fashion through contributing funding, and through my work with them, supporting students, going in for talks, they asked me to become a governor. And that's how I was giving a speech one night at Coots about women in industry, and the then chair of the University of the Arts came and heard me talk, and that's how I was then asked if I would come. And I already had an in with the London College of Fashion. But the lesson there is, if someone asks you to come and speak or do an in conversation with, or go and make an appearance, do it. You never know who's in the audience. And
absolutely.
That's my role. And I've been there I've served 3 terms, which is the maximum you can serve. And then in order to stay, I was made deputy chair. So that was amazing. And I'm still deputy chair now. This is my last year, but that's, you know, that's fantastic. So there's the link, if you like. And my passion is education, because education, as we know, is a transformative experience. So again, it's about people, young people this time, but being able to really, really, well, for the world to open up for them through education. You can't beat that. So being part of that is amazing. But at the same time as that, I was chair of a charity as well. Again, young people. And that was an anti-drugs and alcohol abuse charity. And that was about education, you know, teaching youngsters how to manage and how not to become an abuser and overly use those things. So, you know, again, that was my passion for people at a time where I was very commercial and very aggressive. So it kind of balanced it all out. And then my role with Imperial NHS Trust again, driven by my understanding of the customer experience and the NHS wanting to really think about their patients more. So I was able to get my job because I have an insight and a clarity around customer experience, user experience, and my people, you know, my love of skills, of people again. And Imperial has a workforce of about 14,500 people, 53% of which come from an ethnic minority background. So this to me is my world. So they've made me chair of the people committee so that I'm able to really challenge the trust and make sure they're doing everything they can to support the staff at a really difficult time, of course, but in general, from their well-being point of view, from their performance point of view, and their ability to be able to rise up through the ranks. So I love it. It's people again. Everything comes back to people.
Yeah, I mean, we can see your passion, you know, to do with people. That is really, really inspiring, actually. And I'm sure you've made like huge difference to these organizations as well. You know, all the hard work you're putting in.
I can only hope so. It's not hard work when you love it. That's the key, isn't it? You know, and that's what you'll find in life. And sometimes you'll be in a position, I think, I've been in a position where I don't particularly like the job, but as I say, the road isn't necessarily straight. You've got to go through the bumps, you know, to get back on track sometimes, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect all the time, does it?
Absolutely. Sim, so, you know, you talk about all this learning and, you know, how one things lead to another in your career. So, I mean, you know, how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things? You know, I'm sure you have very busy life. So how do you manage to learn and stay on top of things, basically?
Yeah, well,
any tips for us?
It's very boring and it's very simple. I read prolifically. So I get through tons of information, because I have to for my non-exec positions. You've got to be able to take in the information. So you've got to be able to focus and get through large amounts of information. So that's just for the job, but I do a lot of background reading as well. So I stay informed, and especially on things that are so for example, one of my passions is disruptive industries. So I look a lot in tech and digital about agile companies and things like that. And I try and apply some of that learning from those sorts of disruptive companies into some legacy businesses as well. And that really helps the legacy business sort of realize, you know, needs to be a bit more dynamic sometimes. So I'm afraid I read and read and read around the subject, fiction and, you know, everything. I devour the news, I read a lot. The other thing I do is speak to a lot of people, because what's the best way to get really good insight into particular kind of, I don't know, subjects or that sort of thing. Go for a coffee, speak to people, ask them about their life, their world, and what they're interested in. You learn so much so quickly. Ask questions constantly. That's what I do. Ask questions all the time.
That is really good advice, actually. Yeah, very, very good advice. So looking back, you know, in the entirety of your career, is there anything you would have done you have the opportunity to turn the clock back, would you have done anything differently?
Do you know, I had a look at that, and I've had a bit of self-reflection, and everything I've done, it seems to be, it's ended up being connected. So I don't regret anything, even the bad bits or bits where I was unhappy in a role or a job. I realized what I learned by being unhappy or by not, you know, being as excited as I should be. So you learn even when it's not good. So I think for me, I don't really regret anything. I've seized the opportunity. I think I would be more remorseful or regretful if I hadn't done things because I was scared, or I'd passed over kind of opportunities because I thought, oh, I can't do that. I've never really done that. I've done it and then been frightened and then thought, why did I do that? But then managed to overcome it. And then that teaches you that you don't, you know, crumble if it's slightly out of your reach. Yeah, your confidence builds and you think, oh, I manage that. I overcome my fear. So it is possible. The world isn't going to end because I didn't think I could do it. So I think there's something about building your confidence through experience, and just flinging yourself at various opportunities and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, great. So at this point, I just want to say to the audience that I'm coming to, you know, my last two questions, you know, kind of related questions for Sim. So please do put in your any questions you have into the Q&A box. So Sim, you know, like I said, you know, coming to the end of my list of questions that, you know, for you. What advice will you give to our students or alumni or other audience listening regarding you know, like if there anyone who would actually like to embark on a career in fashion industry or in the not-for-profit sector, you know, what advice will you give them, and how you think they could prepare themselves for such a career?
Well, it's very interesting for young people nowadays. You need a handful of transferable skills, no matter what the industry. Obviously, you'll need your technical skills if you want to become an accountant, of course. But above and beyond that, it's those soft skills. So your ability to be able to tell a story, your ability to be able to describe who you are, what you love, what you're about, the ability to be able to work with other people, to listen well, yeah, and then collaborate, because nothing is done on your own anymore. I think, you know, the best businesses I've ever worked in, it's been a total team effort. So you've got to be able to work with others. You've got to be open enough as well to work with people that perhaps are different from you. So one of the things that helped me a lot, because I was Black and because I'm mixed race, when it came to negotiate with suppliers across the other side of the world, it didn't faze me at all. I remember some of my other trainee buyers being a bit nervous about it, but for me it was just brilliant. I just found it absolutely lovely. I always learned 2 or 3 words to say thank you and please, you know, with my Hong Kong suppliers, and they would love that. I get the best prices because you find a way to engage. You find a way to build a relationship with someone. Business is all about relationships at the end of the day, apart from the deal. You'll get a better deal if the relationship is better, professional, but as compelling as possible. So I think those would be you must have a set of skills that you can transfer, you know, and build your confidence. Read, 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 ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Talk to anyone who will listen to you. Ask them about themselves.
Great advice. Right, so I think at this point I'm going to, you know, look at any questions that I could actually see from the audience. So there are a number of them, Sim. So let's see, you know, how far we can go in terms of covering all those questions. So the first one is, how do you go about predicting fashion trends?
Well, a little bit of magic. But obviously in touch then with what's going on in the world. So the social fabric, and it's as much about a feeling, yeah, so your personal intuition to be able to draw from what's around you every day, but make it different. So fashion, nothing's new in fashion, but the timing of things is new. So you might feel, I just want to wear yellow. I don't know why. That's what happens to me. A color comes to me, and then it gets stronger and stronger. So keep involved in obviously the luxury end. Have a sense of what people are wearing, look around you, yeah, look at films, and then pick up on anything that you can see where patterns are being formed. That's how you kind of pick up on the zeitgeist, yeah? There will be things that are coming through. And obviously the socioeconomic issues in the world today will make a difference. So climate change is having a huge impact on fashion. So it's those sorts of things then will dictate what's going to come ahead. So, you know, I think comfort is very important. So those are the sorts of things, clues that you pick up on that will give you a sense for the future.
Oh, that's really, really useful and very insightful, you know, so you give me some tips how I can look a little bit more fashionable. Fantastic. Another question I see that has been sent to us, Sim, it's So how did you gain the confidence to ignore the barriers and push on? Because it's not, I'm sure for a lot of people it doesn't come naturally, so any advice, any tips, how did you do that really? How do you gain that confidence?
It didn't come naturally to me. Honestly, what I did was I was scared and shaking, but I did it anyway. I remember my first meeting on my own in South Korea with a big corporation called Samsung, who had a clothing unit. I remember my boss at the time couldn't come to the appointment, so she sent me on my own. I was terrified. I knew that I would be, it was my first professional appointment on my own. I was in the car with two South Korean guys who were smoking the first thing in the morning and smelt of garlic, made me feel sick. I got to the office and I was just surrounded by men. It was a very male-dominated society and I was the only black face. I just was besides myself with absolute trepidation, but I thought, I can't let the company down and I've got no choice, I'm here, I have to do it. So I forced my way through my training and asked the right questions, and once I'd got through the meeting, shaking and sweating, I realized I'd done it and the world hadn't caved in and they seemed to be reasonable. And actually they fed back to the big boss that it was a good meeting. So sometimes others don't know that you're very nervous, right? So I felt the fear, it was horrendous. But if you do it once, you overcome it. But you've got to put no other way. Otherwise you hide.
That's great. I think it's just, like you said, be there and just embrace it and do it. Because can you imagine, if you just like suddenly say, okay, I can't do it, let me hide, what would happen? It's basically no choice, just do it, really.
Exactly.
And then, like you said, once you've done it, you could do it, isn't it? So
yes. And then that builds. You still get nervous. It's like if you talk to people who go up on stage, and give presentations, the more they do it, the more practice they are, but they always have a few little nerves at the beginning. And that's good because it sets you up for the event to come. So there'll always be some nerves, always.
Great. Another question, Sim, it's as a woman, can you give advice to other women interested in getting onto boards level?
Onto board level? Yes. You've got to push for it. So basically there's a company called Women on Boards. I don't know if you've heard of online business, and it is specifically for women execs, who have got a career but want to extend that and want to go and sit as a non-executive. So what they do is training. They set up what they call non-exec associate positions. So within the NHS as well, there's a recognition that you can't jump from being an executive to a non-exec. It's quite a steep curve. So you need to sort of learn your way into it. So lots of businesses will set up an associate non-exec director position and you can work your way through that. Try Women on Boards though, that's a brilliant organisation and that's online, and that will give you the training and the confidence that you need to be able to try for things like that. But being a non-exec is brilliant because you use the experience you've had and you've gained over your years as an executive, and more boards nowadays are looking for women, looking for women of colour, also looking for young people. It's something all boards are talking about because they're trying to become more representative of the people and the corporations they basically represent. So this is a good time for women, a good time for people of colour, and a good time for young people to try things perhaps that they wouldn't have done normally.
Well, that's fantastic. And thanks for sharing that detail. I haven't heard of that myself, so that is, I'm sure it's very useful for the audience here. Thank you very much for that information, really. So actually, I've just seen another question coming in, which is related to that. The question is, what are the main duties of a non-executive board member?
So non-executives, it's very important to sort of get the difference. They are a group of people that act as a critical friend, if you like. So their job is to challenge and to encourage the executive to make sure that the strategy is being implemented and that the financial performance is as it should be. So it's scrutiny, it's encouragement, it's support when needed, but it's definitely not hands-on. So if you're a person that likes to get stuck into the inside detail, inside out, it's not a role, it's an advisory role. It's a challenging, it's a scrutiny, it's an assurance role. You're making sure of the quality of the decisions that are being made. You're making sure of safety within a non-NHS trust, an NHS trust, for example, and you're looking for assurance in terms of safe and you know, a good organisation for staff, a good organisation for students and patients and customers. So it's a very much a top-down, a supportive and advisory role.
Right. Okay. So thank you very much for all that information, really, and thank you all the audience for the all the questions. Sim, I honestly would love to carry on this conversation with you forever. I myself have learned so much, and your enthusiasm and your passion is so contagious, I have to say. You know, you make me suddenly feel like I can do anything I like. I can run the world, basically. I hope the audience feel your passion and feel the energy as well, and then feel energized. However, due to timing, you know, I think, you know, I need to wrap up now. So definitely, Sim, thank you so much indeed for spending an hour with us out of your very, very busy schedule. We really, really appreciate this. And like I said, I hope everybody has found it enjoyable, useful, informative, insightful, valuable. So really, really big thank you to Sim for this. And also, I also need to, you know, thank the audience for attending today, and also thanks all the colleagues who have helped to put this event in place and facilitated the smooth running of this event. I think before I actually close, really, there are two key things I would like to sum up, which hopefully will be helpful for everybody here. I think, you know, Sim, you know, all the stuff that you've mentioned are so valuable, but I just pick up some of the key things, perhaps to just sum up as a sort of takeaway for the audience. I mean, you've talked about, you know, passion is important. You need to know your passion and basically follow it, and also, you know, be confident. Even if you feel that maybe I'm not sure if I can do the job, just go ahead, do it, embrace it. You never know what opportunities are going to bring you. Have that confidence, build that confidence. Whatever barrier comes your way, push through, ignore it, carry on. Don't accept that that's where I could achieve. No, just carry on, go ahead, and you will break through. And other things that you mentioned, I absolutely agree about, you know, the importance of teamwork, the importance of collaborating, talking with people, speaking with people, read. Absolutely, I think, you know, that's how you stay on top. We never stop learning, do we? And that's the fun bit as well, you know, because if you just do it, you know, at a point where like, okay, I stopped learning, what's the fun? You know, you need to keep learning and go further, whatever further means to you, but you need to keep, you know, challenging yourself as well, isn't it? So so you've mentioned that, you know, I think those are all very important. Innovation, you've talked about relationship building. At the end of the day, I think, you know, you draw back to it's all about people. So, you know, we need to, you know, I think, you know, the audience need to bear in mind it is about building that relationship, working with people, developing that ability to you know, network with people and to see how you deal with each different kind of person, isn't it? So Sim, I don't know if I summed up all the key things. I mean, obviously everything is important, but you know, because of time, I don't know if there's any one last thing you would like to mention, really.
No, just look, you know, life is precious. We've discovered that, haven't we? So there isn't time to waste. Get on, enjoy, do as much as you can, seek out more information, more knowledge, you know, fling yourself at your latest project. It might not be your life's work, or it might not be where you want your career to go, but you will learn something from that moment. So just seize the opportunity and do and think as much as you can. It's just, you know, don't waste time.
Great. I think that's a very strong message to leave to all of us, you know, at the end of this event, really. So I think that draws to a close of this event, Sim. So once again, thank you so much indeed. And also for the audience, just want to say that this is actually the last event in the series. However, we will be back. So, you know, that's just the last one in this current series, but there will be other series coming up in the new academic year. There will be more, definitely more events featuring inspiring alumni like Sim. And so keep an eye out for our upcoming events in the future. And once again, thank you very much indeed for everyone, and to Sim again. Thank you.